June 14, 1800. Napoleon Bonaparte faces what could be the end of his career. Outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped in northern Italy, the French army is on the brink of disaster. Austrian cannons roar. Infantry swarms the field. Every French line is collapsing. And then, against all odds, reinforcements arrive. Cavalry charges, and a bold, brilliant maneuver turned certain defeat into one of history's most legendary comebacks. This is the Battle of Marengo, Napoleon's greatest comeback, and it will change Europe forever.
"I have fought 60 battles," Napoleon once said, "and I have learned nothing which I did not know at the beginning." To his admirers, this was humility. To his enemies, arrogance. But to historians, it is a window into the mind of a man who understood war on an instinctive, almost terrifying level. And nowhere is this clearer than in the brilliant, chaotic, near-catastrophic victory that became his greatest comeback, the Battle of Marengo. The late 18th century was a furnace reshaping Europe. The French Revolution had shattered the old order, toppled a monarchy, and ignited a battle of ideologies across the continent. Kings and emperors watched with dread as revolutionary armies marched across borders, spreading republican ideas with musket fire and cannon smoke. What began as an internal uprising soon became a continental war, and in that firestorm, a new kind of commander emerged. Napoleon Bonaparte, a low-born Corsican artillery officer, rose faster than any general of his age. He was not the product of privilege, but of upheaval. The revolution opened the door, and he kicked it off its hinges. His victories in Italy during the mid-1970s stunned Europe. France, exhausted and politically unstable, suddenly had a military prodigy who could defeat Austrian, Sardinian, and Italian forces in rapid succession. With each triumph, Napoleon became more than a general. He became a symbol. Hope to some, danger to others, destiny to himself. But in 1799, everything changed. France was fractured, surrounded by enemies. Its armies pushed back on multiple fronts. The government, the Directory, was weak, despised, and nearly powerless. It was in this moment of crisis that Napoleon made his boldest political move. He abandoned his army in Egypt, returned to Paris, and overthrew the Directory in a swift, almost bloodless coup. The consulate was born, and Napoleon became first consul, the most powerful man in France. Yet power meant responsibility, and responsibility meant restoring France's military pride. Austria had retaken Italy. The Second Coalition threatened on all sides. France needed a victory, a spectacular victory, to reassert dominance. And Napoleon knew where it would happen. He tapped his finger on the map months before the first shot was fired and said, "The decisive battle will be fought here, at Marengo."
Europe before the campaign. By the dawn of the 19th century, Europe was a chessboard crowded with rival armies, collapsing alliances, and monarchs desperate to contain the wildfire of revolution spreading from France. The execution of Louis XVI had shocked royal courts from Vienna to St. Petersburg. What terrified them most was not the guillotine itself, but the idea it represented, that a king could fall, that the old world could crumble, and that ordinary people could seize power. In response, Europe formed a series of alliances known as the coalitions,
each aimed at crushing revolutionary France. The first coalition had failed, broken by French victories and Napoleon's legendary Italian campaign. But by 1799, a new force had gathered, the Second Coalition, led by Austria, Russia, Britain, and Naples. This alliance was stronger, more coordinated, and absolutely determined to erase the French Republic from the map. Austria, the largest Habsburg power, carried the weight of the war. Its armies flooded into Italy and Germany, pushing the French back across the Alps. Under commanders like General Melas and the Russian hero Alexander Suvorov, the coalition swept across northern Italy with brutal efficiency. French garrisons surrendered, cities fell, and for the first time since Napoleon's earlier victories, Austria controlled the region again. Back in France, the situation grew desperate. The Directory was failing, economy collapsing, food shortages rising, riots erupting, politicians screaming inside the chambers of power. The Republic looked ready to implode. Soldiers in the field were underpaid, underfed, and undersupplied. Many officers believed the revolution had devoured itself. And then Napoleon arrived. His return from Egypt electrified France. Crowds filled the streets chanting his name. The army rallied behind him instantly. When he staged the coup of 18 Brumaire, the Directory toppled like a rotten tree. The generals, the politicians, even the public expected one thing from their new first consul: victory. Swift, decisive, brilliant. But the strategic situation was a nightmare. Austria held nearly all of Italy. The British Navy dominated the seas. In Germany, Austrian forces under General Kray numbered more than 120,000. In Italy, General Melas commanded another 100,000. Veteran soldiers, disciplined and occupying strong positions. France could not fight on both fronts with equal strength. To survive, Napoleon needed a campaign so audacious, so unexpected, that it would overturn the entire balance of the war in a single blow. He began to prepare a masterpiece: Napoleon's return and the consulate. When Napoleon seized power in November 1799, he inherited a nation exhausted by war and divided by politics. The consulate, the new government he established, was meant to project stability, but stability meant nothing without victory, and the French Republic looked anything but victorious. Across France, military recruitment had slowed. Veteran soldiers were scattered across distant fronts. Equipment was scarce. Horses were hard to find. Thousands of men marched barefoot, wrapped in tattered cloth instead of boots. Yet the moment Napoleon took command, the atmosphere changed. He had something no other French leader possessed: a reputation for winning the impossible. Napoleon's first task was to rebuild the strength of the army itself. In just a few months, he raised 200,000 men, an astonishing feat given the state of France's economy. He reorganized supply lines, restored discipline, rewarded competent officers, and replaced the incompetent ones without hesitation. His presence alone seemed to energize the entire military structure, a reminder that France still had a general who could outthink and outmaneuver the continent's greatest commanders. But Napoleon's genius was not only on the battlefield. He understood the importance of deception, secrecy, and psychological warfare. As Austria and Britain watched France rebuild, Napoleon crafted a plan that would mislead enemy spies at every step. He gathered a force in Dijon, making sure foreign agents saw exactly what he wanted them to see: a crowd of old men, young boys, half-trained recruits, practicing drills in muddy fields. It looked pathetic, deliberately so. Reports quickly spread across Europe. Napoleon's army of the reserve is nothing but a weak militia. France won't invade Italy. They can barely defend themselves.
Austria believed these reports. Britain believed them. Even some French politicians believed them. Meanwhile, Napoleon quietly assembled the real army elsewhere. Hardened veterans, cavalry, artillery, experienced officers, all moving in separate columns toward Geneva. His intention was bold, almost reckless, to strike at Italy from the rear through a route no one expected. But to pull this off, he needed time. Time bought with blood. In northern Italy, General André Massena and his 40,000 troops faced the full might of General Melas's Austrian army. Massena's orders were brutal and simple. Hold. Hold as long as humanly possible. Your suffering will decide the fate of France. Massena obeyed, and the stage was set for Napoleon's greatest gamble.
The strategic situation in 1800. By the spring of 1800, the map of Europe looked grim for France. The Second Coalition had retaken Italy, threatened the Rhine, and pushed French armies to their limits. Napoleon's newly reformed consular government was only months old, and if the military situation collapsed, so would his political power. Everything depended on reversing Austria's momentum. The Austrians held the advantage. In Germany, General Paul Kray commanded roughly 120,000 men, entrenched behind river lines, fortresses, and supply depots that stretched deep into Habsburg territory. In Italy, General Michael von Melas held nearly 100,000 veterans, occupying strong positions from the Alps to the Po River. Their combined strength dwarfed Napoleon's operational forces. Austria had a clear strategy: crush the French in Italy, then move north into Switzerland, link with Kray, and push a united front into France itself. A victory at Genoa, or anywhere along the northern Italian frontier, could collapse French defenses completely, and for a time, that seemed inevitable. Massena's crucial sacrifice. In April 1800, Melas launched a furious offensive. French General Massena was forced back, step by prudent step, toward the Ligurian coast. Eventually, he and his garrison were surrounded in Genoa, besieged by Melas's army from land and the British fleet from sea. Genoa descended into hell. Disease, starvation, bombardment. Massena's men held on for months, knowing that every hour they endured was an hour Napoleon could use to execute his bold plan. Massena would later write, "I would sooner eat the last of my boots than surrender before the first consul moves." His defiance bought Napoleon the time he needed. Napoleon conceals his true objective. Most European leaders were certain the first consul's main attack would strike Germany, not Italy. They expected Napoleon to reinforce Moreau, push across the Rhine, and threaten Vienna directly. Even Napoleon's own generals initially believed this. But Napoleon had no intention of attacking Germany first. Instead, he wanted to strike Italy, the place Austria thought safest. If he could defeat Melas there, he could cut Austria's southern army off from its bases and force Vienna to negotiate before Kray or the British could react. It was the kind of move that could fail catastrophically. To succeed, Napoleon needed to bring an entire French army into Italy without the Austrians realizing it was coming. And the only way to do that was to repeat one of the most daring maneuvers in ancient history. Crossing the Alps. Napoleon believed boldness wins wars, but only if boldness is paired with precision. To save Italy, he needed to place an entire French army behind Austrian lines without Melas even realizing it was coming. And the only way to do that was to repeat one of the most daring maneuvers in ancient history. One was Hannibal Barca, who crossed the Alps with war elephants to strike at Rome. The other would be Napoleon Bonaparte, who planned to cross those same mountains with cannons, cavalry, artillery trains, supply wagons, and thousands of men. A march into the sky. In May 1800, Napoleon ordered the Army of the Reserve to begin its ascent. The chosen route, the Great St. Bernard Pass, was breathtakingly dangerous. Narrow cliffs, avalanches, deadly winds, and deep snow made it nearly impassable even for travelers, let alone an army. The men marched single file, leaning into the icy winds, dragging artillery piece by piece. Cannon barrels were hollowed out and packed with rations. The heavy wheels and carriages were taken apart, strapped onto sledges, and pushed up sheer slopes by teams of exhausted soldiers. In many places, the path was so steep that men had to haul equipment upward using ropes anchored to the mountainside. If one man slipped, everyone below him risked being dragged into the abyss. Yet morale held. Napoleon rode among his troops, wrapped in a simple gray coat, encouraging them with quiet words. He wasn't a distant commander. He was there, climbing, freezing, suffering with them. The symbolic image of Napoleon crossing the Alps on a majestic rearing horse, immortalized in paintings, was pure myth. In reality, he rode a small mule led by a guide. But the myth captured the essence of what his men felt. Their general was invincible, and perhaps so were they. The Austrians are caught completely off guard. Melas did not believe Napoleon could cross the Alps so early in the season. He assumed the French would attempt the pass in late June or July, if at all. Thus, when French vanguards burst into northern Italy far earlier than expected, Austrian scouts reported it in disbelief. Napoleon wasted no time. He captured Aosta, then Ivrea, and swept into Milan on June 2nd. In a lightning campaign, he seized the heart of Lombardy, cutting Austria's supply lines and threatening their communication routes all the way to Vienna. Suddenly, Melas found himself isolated. Behind him the French, before him the mountains. Around him territory he thought secure only weeks earlier. The trap was tightening, but the Austrians still had one chance to escape disaster, and Napoleon, unknowingly, was about to give them the opening they needed.
The Battle of Marengo in the morning phase. Napoleon had cut deep into Austrian territory, but he had also stretched his own forces dangerously thin. To secure every road, every river crossing, and every potential retreat route for the Austrians, he scattered his divisions across northern Italy. It was a bold strategic move, but it left his main army perilously weak. By mid-June, Napoleon believed Melas was retreating eastward, preparing to abandon Italy altogether. That assumption would nearly destroy the French army. The Austrians strike first. At dawn on June 14, 1800, the Austrian army began crossing the Bormida River near the small village of Marengo. More than 30,000 Austrian infantry, 8,000 cavalry, and 100 cannons surged across the narrow bridges, preparing for a decisive assault. Napoleon had barely 22,000 men on the field. Many were spread out in distant positions, expecting no major battle. General Victor Perrin held the front line, deployed in a thin arc around the village. His men were outnumbered nearly 4-1, and yet the French initial resistance was fierce. The vineyards and ditches around Marengo formed a natural defensive maze, slowing Melas's advance and giving the French time to react. Napoleon realizes the danger.
When reports arrived that the entire Austrian army, not a small detachment, was attacking, Napoleon understood instantly that he had misread Melas's intentions. He had hoped to strike the Austrians as they retreated. Instead, he was fighting their main force head-on. Napoleon dispatched urgent riders to summon General Desaix and General Boudet, the only reinforcements within reach. But they were miles away, and the French line was already buckling. Laon arrives, the first turning point. Just as Perrin's division began falling back, the incomparable General John Laon marched onto the field. A veteran of countless battles, Laon was one of Napoleon's most loyal and capable commanders. His arrival stabilized the collapsing front. For hours, the battle raged through wheat fields and vineyards. The Austrians pushed forward relentlessly, their artillery pounding the French line, but the French refused to break. Still, numbers told the story. More Austrian battalions crossed the river. More cavalry swarmed onto the plain. By mid-morning, Melas was committing his entire force. Napoleon, watching this unfold, made a grim assessment. He could not win this phase of the battle. His goal now was simple: delay, survive, and hold the line until Desaix arrived. But Melas was determined to crush the French before help could reach them. And soon, the battlefield would tilt sharply in Austria's favor.
Collapse of the French lines. By late morning, the battlefield at Marengo had transformed from a series of skirmishes into a full-scale Austrian onslaught. General Melas, certain that victory was within reach, poured more and more troops across the Bormida bridges. The plain filled with white-coated Austrian infantry, supported by cavalry and over 100 cannons. Their sheer mass began to overwhelm the thin French defenses. The pressure becomes unbearable. Laon and Victor fought with extraordinary determination, contesting every ditch, every farm, every vineyard. But their divisions were exhausted. Austrian artillery had found its range, and shells rained down on the French lines with terrifying accuracy. The French right flank, already under severe pressure, was now threatened by a turning movement led by General Ott, whose forces pushed relentlessly toward the village of Castel Ceriolo. If Ott broke through, he would strike the French rear and cut them off entirely. Napoleon recognized the danger instantly. He galloped to the threatened flank, ordering his newly arrived consular guard to plug the gaps. These elite troops, though few in number, held firm against waves of Austrian infantry. Their discipline bought precious minutes, possibly hours, but it could not turn the tide. A fighting retreat begins. By mid-noon, the French line began to buckle. Victor's division, battered and bleeding, started to fall back. Laon's, heroic as always, attempted a countercharge, but was forced to yield ground under relentless musket fire. The retreat was not a rout, and this is where Napoleon's genius shone brightest. Under constant artillery bombardment, with Austrian cavalry harassing them at every step, the French forces withdrew in remarkably good order. Officers shouted commands, drummers beat steady rhythms, and the units pivoted, realigned, and withdrew without collapsing. Even Austrian officers would later observe with astonishment how the French, though unnumbered and nearly surrounded, held their discipline intact. Still, there was no denying the reality. Napoleon was losing the battle. Melas believes victory was secured. By early afternoon, Austrian forces occupied Marengo. The French were pushed back nearly 3 kilometers, their line bent and fractured. Seeing the field covered with Austrian banners, General Melas became convinced that the French were finished. Exhausted after hours of directing the battle, he had been wounded by a fall from his horse earlier. Melas turned command over to his chief of staff, General Conrad von Zach.
he returned to his headquarters to prepare dispatches announcing a glorious victory. It was a fatal mistake, because just as Milas relaxed, just as the Austrians began reorganizing to deliver the final blow, General de Sac's lead battalions appeared on the horizon, and Napoleon saw his opening.
The Battle of the Atlantic was never marked by a single decisive moment. No famous flag planting, no iconic battlefield. It was a shadow war, fought beneath the waves, across storm-tossed seas, and in the cramped steel hulls of ships that most people would never see. But its outcome shaped the entire war. Because if the Atlantic had fallen, if Britain had starved, if American troops and supplies had never made it across the ocean, then D-Day might never have happened. The liberation of Europe might never have begun, and World War II might have ended in a very different world. Instead, the Allies held the line, convoy by convoy, ship by ship, life by life. By 1945, the once fearsome U-boat arm had been shattered. The Atlantic was secured, and the longest, deadliest naval campaign in history had been won, not by glory or spectacle, but by endurance, innovation, and unimaginable sacrifice. Today, the ocean looks calm, quiet, peaceful, but beneath its waves lies the greatest secret of World War II. A battlefield as vast as the ocean itself, and the story of the thousands who fought in silence to keep the world alive. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into hidden World War II history, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me which secret battle you want to see next.